On this episode of Locked On Angels, could Polar Pete come to Southern California? There's been a lot of rumors connecting the Angels and Pete Alonso. So, Johnny, would it be a good move? Would it be a bad move? Do the Angels need a player like Pete Alonso? And what happens to Nolan Schanuel if they do? Plus, we're going to talk about Tim Anderson and J.D. Davis and their minor league contracts. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us any way you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube and leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And Johnny, Super Bowl 59 is almost here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers can bet $5, and if you win, you score $200 in bonus bets. Just download their app or head to FanDuel.com to get started.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, it's our third off season here at Locked On Angels. We're getting ready for our fourth full-time season as the hosts with the Super Halo Bros. So we're so glad that you're here with us. Right now, we're doing 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for our full episodes. We'll ramp back up to 5 days a week, right around when pitchers and catchers report. So just a few weeks away, and it's getting exciting. And once the Super Bowl is said and done, you know I'm tweeting, it's baseball season.
Yeah,
it's happening.
And about 4 million other people.
Exactly. It's a tradition. Hey, on today's show, could Polar Pete come to the warm weather of Southern California? Would it be a good move, a bad move? What happens to Nolan Schanuel if they do? Well, there was a lot of rumors from last week. So last Thursday, Mike, there was a report from Pat Ragazzo of Sports Illustrated that Pete Alonso met with the Angels last Wednesday. So a week ago today. Now, normally, if there's that connection of, well, the Angels are interested in so-and-so, and they, they might want to sign so-and-so. Usually it's that level of Scott Boras rumor. He puts that out into the ether. But to have a meeting with the Angels, I think that's why this means more in a sense. So it's much different news than just, the Angels have interest. They actually got together. So since they got together, we thought it was worth asking on the show. And we have talked about Pete Alonso before, but it's worth asking, should they sign him? Let's do a little digging into where he's been, what kind of contract he was projected to get at the beginning of the offseason, but now that things have progressed, why don't you give us a little recap of where he's been, Mike?
Yeah, Johnny, he's 30 years old, obviously spent his entire career with the New York Mets. He's an all-star in 4 out of possible 5 seasons. 2020, there was no all-star game, and so that's why he didn't make it. So really has been an all-star every season, Rookie of the Year in 2019, and hit 50 home runs that season. In his career, John, slashed .249, .339 on base, a .514 slugging, and an .854 OPS. That .514 slugging is really good. Anything above 500 is really good. John, an OPS plus of 134, meaning 34% better than the average player in baseball. In 2024, he hit .241, had a .329 on base, a .459 slugging, and a .788 OPS. 123 OPS plus, 91 runs scored, 34 home runs, 88 RBIs, 14 of his 34 home runs came with runners on last year. He had a .232 average with runners in scoring position. That's important for the Angels because they suck when it comes to runners in scoring position, right? And had 105 games where he bat cleanup, and that's his best spot in the order. .252, .341 on base, .479 slugging, and an .819 OPS. His K rate was a bit high last year, higher than his career average, 24.7% last year. His career, 22.8. We're gonna come back to that in just a moment. John, his walk rate last year was actually better than his career rate, 10.1, and his career rate is 9.9. And here's the thing that I think makes him probably the most attractive to at least the Angels. He's never missed more than 10 games. 10 games in a season. Never missed more than 10 games in a season. John, never missed more than 10 games.
How many has he not missed?
10 games, Johnny. And obviously he's a first baseman. He's not great over there. He had a negative 3.6 ultimate zone rating in his career. However, last year actually improved a bit, had a 0.4 positive ultimate zone rating, -3 defensive run save, a -8 outs above average. Now, for reference, Nolan Schanuel had a -1.4 UZR last year, and Schanuel had a 1 defensive run saved and -5 outs above average. So those are some background stats and statistics on Pete Alonso, things we've talked about on this show just to get all of our everydayers caught up.
Yeah, and some considerations you have to make. He does have a qualifying offer attached to him, so the Angels would lose a second-round pick and then the slot money that comes with that second-round pick, which is important because you want to have a lot of slot money to sign players across the entire draft, especially with that number 2 pick. You got to be able to back the Brinks truck up for them. MLB trade rumors at the beginning of the offseason said he would get 5 years, $125 million, so $25 million a year. The Athletic also said 5 years. They said $26 million a year. Mike, the biggest thing that I've been seeing around the dialogue of the Angels and Pete Alonso is, what an arty move. This is such an arty move. And I'm trying to wrap my head around why. And I think it's because he's a 30-year-old first baseman who hits a lot of home runs, has a lot of power, and it feels like the kind of guy that Artie would jump at. Now, I also have seen people say, he's on the decline and, he didn't have a great season. He's getting older. I just want to get this out of the way right now. 30-year-old free agents are the norm. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me hammer that point home again. Just like 10 games, 30-year-old free agents are the norm. Guys like Bryce Harper, Juan Soto, Vladdy Jr. next year when he's a free agent, they are the exception, because by the time you finish out arbitration, you finish out all that stuff with the team that signed you, or at least brought you up to the majors, you're about 29, 30 years old. Look at Taylor Ward. He's 32. And so, he's a late bloomer. Now there's nothing that I can find to indicate that Alonso is on the downturn. In fact, Citi Field, where the Mets play, is typically a pitcher's park. And so Alonso has done some good things, even in a pitcher-friendly environment. Here's something interesting. He's got a 239 average at home at Citi Field and 258 away, Mike. So that's something to take into consideration. His average exit velocity is consistently between 89.5 to 90 miles an hour. The max exit velocity about 116, consistent with the last 3 seasons. So there's no power concerns. There's nothing, in his swing that he's losing it. He's still hitting the ball hard. It hasn't declined year over year like it can with some hitters. Now, one question I've seen is, hey, what's up with him going from 46 home runs in 2023 to 34 home runs in 2024? Well, there's a couple of factors here. His ground ball percentage was the highest it's been in his career, 42%. The last 2 years, sat around 36%. The average launch angle on the balls that he's hitting into play, 14.4 degrees in 2024. In 2022 and 2023, it was 18.2. So he's lifting the ball more in those seasons where he had 40 home runs and 46 home runs. And when you have a lower launch angle, you're not going to hit as many home runs. And so he wasn't lifting the ball as much as he has had in the past. It also plays into his fly ball percentage. It was the lowest since 2020 at 28.2%. And Mike, if you want to hit home runs, you got to hit fly balls, right? So tell us why this happened, Mike.
Yeah, swing decisions, John. Alonso saw 49.7% of his pitches in the strike zone. He swung at 59.8% of them. That was the lowest of his career last season. So basically what this is saying is that he wasn't swinging at pitches in the zone as much as he was swinging at pitches in the zone from previous years. In fact, he looked at the most called strikes of his career last season, 19.2%. And here's the really weird thing. That caused his K rate to be 24.7. That's the highest since 2020, but his swinging strike percentage was the lowest of his career at 9.7%. So Pete wasn't swinging and missing and chasing bad pitches. He was just watching good pitches in the zone go by far more than he should. And so why can we believe his strikeout percentage will go down next year, Johnny? Well, because with guys with a 9.7 swinging strike rate like Pete Alonso had last year, they have better strikeout rates. Let me give you a couple of examples. Vladdy Jr., 9.6% swinging strike rate. His K rate was 13.8%. Bobby Witt, 9.8 swinging strike rate. His K rate, 15%. Luis Garcia Jr., 9.7. His K rate, 16.3. And then Lourdes Gurriel Jr., 9.6. And his K rate, 18.3%.
So you're telling me that Alonso just needs to be a junior and his he'll match these guys, because I thought that was kind of funny. All these guys are
all juniors. I just now noticed that. Yeah.
So Mike, I think the big question here is, does Pete get back to hitting 40 plus home runs in a season, and how does he do that? Well, it's very simple. He's got to lift the ball more. And in fact, the 2 months that he had 8 home runs in 2024 were April and August. That's also when his fly ball percentage averaged around 30% rather than the lower percentage it was all season long, 28.2. And the launch angle he averaged in those months where he hit 8 home runs was about 16 degrees. So not quite the 18 it was, but also not the 14 it had been on average over the course of the season. The second thing he needs to do is attack the zone, because he can't watch those pitches in the zone go by. And to be fair, he did walk more in 2024, but that called strike rate was too high considering that he wasn't swinging and missing. So I have confidence that Pete is going to get back to where he was, considering he's not chasing. He didn't suddenly go blind or lose his eyesight up there. He just needs to attack the zone more and be a little bit more aggressive in that.
Well, and that's the thing that I think these numbers tell us, and this is an assumption on my part, but if I'm going to read into these numbers a bit, his 2 big home run months, April and August, are months where you want to get off to a good start. And August, you're in the middle of a pennant race, and the Mets were.
Well, and so, nobody expected them to, there was questions at the deadline of should they buy, should they sell? And then they started to turn it around and get to the playoffs.
And so it seemed as though, like in April, hey, I'm gonna try to hit some more home runs. I'm gonna try to do more of an uppercut swing. And then in August, like, hey, my team needs me to come through, so I'm gonna swing a bit more for the fences. So it feels like it was more of a strategic baseball decision for Pete Alonso. And I think that the K rate, the swinging strikes, all of that, I think that that's an indication that he was just being really thoughtful about what he was doing at the plate, which
maybe a little too thoughtful.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, that's what you want in one of your big stars. You want somebody who's at the plate, who knows what's going on. Mike Trout's talked about this, where he's like, they're going to throw me a pitch here. They're going to throw me a pitch down. Now it's going to come up. And he had to adjust. And there were times where he did, and there were times where he didn't. But knowing what's coming and knowing how to adjust, that's the type of hitter that you want at the plate, especially when the game's on the line, when runners are on base. And so Pete Alonso is that type of hitter. And that's why the Mets fans loved him, and the Mets organization at the time loved him. I don't know about now, but loved him at the time, right?
You know what? A lot of fans, I've been seeing Mets fans really want him back. And there was somebody, if I can find it, I'll retweet it. But it was essentially like, did Pete Alonso like lose his locker room? Because this was his locker room.
Yeah.
And now you look around and like Nimmo got paid. A couple of other guys got paid. They paid for Juan Soto. But why is it hard to land on something with Pete Alonso? That's interesting to me. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, the Angels don't have a Pete Alonso, Mike. What do we mean by that? And do they need one? We're going to get into that conversation coming right up.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59. Slow down, Mike.
Super Halo Bowl.
Super Bowl 59 is almost here. Johnny, one game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make this game and the plays in this game more exciting than with FanDuel. And whether it's predicting the first touchdown or calling the MVP or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on all of the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds, and you can feel the thrill of the kickoff to the final whistle. And if the referees are going to help the Chiefs win again, you can bet on that too.
I was going to say, I got to feel something.
Yes.
And thanks to FanDuel, I can, because I feel nothing about this Super Bowl. The Eagles and the Chiefs, come on.
The live betting feature on FanDuel is really great because it helps you to stay involved even if you're not really excited about the game. Super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and then potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake, right? So download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Again, you're going to bet $5. If you win, you get $200 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Everydayers, if you want to help with the wildfire situation and the recovery efforts here in Southern California, you can donate to Convoy of Hope. There is a link in the episode description, whether you're watching or listening. They are a nonprofit that Mike and I fully trust. 100% of your donations go towards helping people, not the salaries or, different things like that. It's all going towards the recovery efforts here in Southern California. If you donate, send us confirmation of your donation. We'll put you in a drawing for some Super Halo Bros merch. We'd really appreciate it. We'd love for you to support Convoy of Hope.
John, you mentioned something as we were talking about the second segment coming up. Well, the second segment is here, and the discussion we want to have is the Angels are missing a Pete Alonso. So, Johnny, what do we mean by that? Why don't you give us an explanation?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that you can expect from Pete Alonso, and one of those is that he's going to hit you 40 home runs in a season, Mike. And I know 34 was a down year, but like we mentioned in the last segment, there's no reason why he can't get back to 40 plus home runs. The last Angel to have 40 home runs at least, Shohei Ohtani in 2023. Before that was Mike Trout in 119 games, and that was the back injury season, so he could have certainly had more. And then you look at what he did in 29 games last season, hit 10 home runs, so you know that you want to take the over on the 23 and a half that Prize Picks has going on right now with Mike Trout's season home runs. But Trout is constantly a threat, and that's something that we need him in this lineup for, but health has been his biggest issue. Now, we're confident that him being slim and trim is going to help him out this season. In fact, did you see the picture of him and Big Papi? He's still it felt like confirmation from the Christmas picture of oh yeah, Trout leaned out. And that's what we want. And so because health is a big issue, I want to remind everybody, like you said, Mike, Alonso's never missed more than 10 games in a season. And when the Angels didn't have Mike Trout, the power came from Neto, Ohapi, Ward, and Adele. Each of those guys had 20-plus home runs last year. Does Jorge Soler help with the slugging? Yeah, totally. And he's another 20-plus homer guy with 30 home run potential. He's also a threat to this lineup, but he's also a doubles guy, Mike. He hit 34 last year, and he was 11th in doubles overall. And so, yes, you do have your sluggers in Mike Trout. Soler is, a 30 home run potential guy. Obviously, the young guys and Taylor Ward each hit 20 plus each last year. But if you want a 40 plus guy, you can get that from Alonso. And the Angels don't quite have that right now, other than Mike Trout, and health is his biggest issue there.
Yeah, and I mentioned this in the first segment, the high leverage situations, the runner in scoring position situations. Obviously, the Angels have really struggled with that. Here's Alonso's career averages in high leverage situations. He slashed 243, has a 332 on base, 499 slugging, and an 831 OPS. Again, remember, 500 slugging is the best. That's what you want. Yeah, 499 in high leverage situations is fantastic, right?
I love putting it this way. The way you feel about a guy hitting 300 for batting average is the way you should feel about a 400 on base and a 500 slugging. So
Yeah.
again, if they're 3, 4, and 5 across average on base and slugging, that's how you want to feel about a 500 slugging, is the same way you feel about a 300 average.
Now here's some sexy numbers. Okay, so this is Alonso's career with runners in scoring position: 256 batting average, 374 on base, 536 slugging percentage, and a 911 OPS, because you're going to have to call emergency because this guy comes through, right? Remember, an 800 OPS is a good OPS, and a 536 slugging means that he's doing damage with runners on base. John, extra base hits, doubles, home runs. I mean, this guy comes through when it counts. And that's what the Angels have not had the last, feels like, 5, 6, 7 seasons, right?
Right. Yeah. Don't forget 195 career RBIs in high leverage situations. What about the Angels don't have a Pete Alonso in terms of a power corner infielder? Mike, here's what the Angels don't have at first base, or as we all know, third base, your typical power hitting corner infielder. Over at first base, the Angels ranked 26th in baseball in slugging percentage from first base last year with a 353 slugging. The Mets, with Alonso playing most of that first base over there, they ranked 4th with a 459 slugging in 2024. Over at third base, now I'm not saying Alonso's going to play third, but this is what the Angels are lacking, that power corner infielder. They ranked 24th with a 341 slugging percentage last year. The last time the Angels had a slugger at a corner position was Jared Walsh, Mike. In 2021, he had a 509 slugging percentage. Man, I miss Jared Walsh. I miss All-Star Jared Walsh. I miss that guy. I'm so sad the way things happen for him and the illness that he's been experiencing. I really hope that he can find it again. But man, we thought we had our guy over at first base, and it's just unfortunate what happened to him. And speaking of what happens to first baseman, Mike, what happens to Nolan Schanuel if the Angels sign Pete Alonso?
Yeah, Angels have to decide what they want from their first baseman. Do they want somebody who was second in the league in contact percentage from first base? First place was Luis Ariz, the Padres, by the way. But do you want a contact first guy, or do you want a power threat guy? Now, someone like Schanuel keeps the line moving with runners in scoring position. John, 257 batting average and a 381 on base percentage. That's good, right? And 400 is good for on base percentage. Now, they have to really decide what they want to do here, because Nolan Schanuel has just come up and had a first full season. So the Angels have to decide, do you want somebody who can kind of spray the ball around, or do you want a power hitter at first base?
Yeah. And I think when you consider, the fact that the Angels second in the league in contact percentage at the first base position, that's all Nolan Schanuel.
Yep.
And like you mentioned, like him keeping the line moving with runners in scoring position, he's not the guy driving in the runs. But Mike, sometimes you just feel like keep the momentum going, right? And sometimes it's good to have a Schanuel like that. But if the Angels do decide between, Schanuel being the contact guy, keeping the line moving, or if you want that power threat over at first base in Pete Alonso, here's some possibilities of what you could do with Nolan Schanuel. Mike, he's got options. He can go back to the minor leagues. They don't have to get rid of him. They don't have to give him the boot or anything like that. He could go back to the minor leagues, really hone in on being a Luis Ariz type of hitter where he's hitting 300 every season, or maybe he works on taking more walks. We saw how good he was at that in 2023 in the short window of time we got him. That dialed back a little bit for Schanuel this season. Maybe he becomes the high average guy by following up on hitting 280 from June onward like he did last year. And maybe 6'4", 220, he hits the weight room, puts on some strength, and hits more home runs, and he works that out in the minor leagues.
Yeah. There's also the potential of him getting traded. Maybe they can make a deal for Nolan Schanuel. Maybe he moves to another position. There's been a suggestion that he can play the outfield. He played a little bit in college. It's kind of crowded already, right? and so that's an interesting situation. I think honestly, like there's a lot of options with Nolan Schanuel being he's a left-handed thrower, or is he a right-handed thrower? He's a left-handed thrower, isn't he?
I got to look actually.
Yeah, look that up, because if there's any suggestions of other positions, if he's a right-handed thrower, then maybe they can have him play somewhere else in the infield. But if he's a left-handed thrower, then they're not going to, and he's going to have to go to the outfield.
He's a right-handed thrower.
So if he's right-handed, then maybe there's other options that Nolan Schanuel can learn how to play. Although here's a young guy in a situation where thrown right into the majors, and then you're going to throw a new position at him because you take away his previous position. Taylor Ward struggled with that, right? And I think Taylor Ward's late blooming was because of the fact that they moved him around a lot. So if they move Schanuel around a lot, they have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, one thing that you might consider is a move to second base, because that there is a need there, right? I looked up his average arm strength, and it was 76.5 miles per hour last year. And the same speed, arm strength, 76.5 miles per hour, guys who played second base, who threw that on average, Brandon Drury, Xander Bogaerts, Colt Keith, who's a top Tigers prospect. They're actually thinking about moving him to first and trading Spencer Torkelson, I think. And then Marcus Semien also threw 76.5 miles per hour from second base. So the big question is, can Schanuel handle the range that's needed for second base? He didn't have great range as a first baseman compared to the rest of the league. But yeah, you're right. Like, since he does throw right-handed, that is a viable option. He kind of, the way he hits the ball, Mike, kind of feels like your prototypical second baseman. So I want to throw two questions at you. Do the Halos need an Alonso, and what do you do with Nolan Schanuel?
Yes and yes. And I know that the second question isn't a yes or no, but yes, having a Pete Alonso could be a game changer for this lineup. And before you comment, and I know you already did, but before you comment, yes, they need pitching. Yes, we know. We get that. But what we're talking about is Pete Alonso. And if it means that they don't get a pitcher and they get Pete Alonso, then I would rather have them get Pete Alonso if they're not going to choose to get a pitcher. But if they're going to get a pitcher, then go after him. Now, here's the thing with Nolan Schanuel. He's great, but once in a lifetime, a Pete Alonso comes along. And I would love to see Nolan continue to develop. I would love to see that. But what typically happens is sometimes you hang on and you go, well, I'm gonna develop this guy and not go get that guy. And it ends up in the long term not working out. Think Casey Kochman. They made the trade for Mark Teixeira, and it was a great trade because Kochman ended up not being too fantastic, right? And so this is not a knock on Schanuel, but I think when you have somebody like a Pete Alonso and a Nolan Schanuel standing up in your lineup, I think you're going to go, I'm going to take Pete over Schanuel 9 out of 10 times, maybe even 10 out of 10 times.
All right, we got to talk about Tim Anderson and J.D. Davis, because everyone's freaking out that the Angels are dumpster diving. But the Angels signed two guys to minor league deals. J.D. Davis played with the A's and the Yanks last season, had a struggle through his season, 218 average, 293 on base, 338 slugging, 631 OPS. His last good quality season was 2023, 144 games with the Giant, had 248 average, 325 on base, 413 slugging, 738 OPS. He can play a little outfield, but he is predominantly going to be first base, third base. So a little bit of depth there. And then, of course, Scott Braun's favorite player, our buddy Scott Braun at South Territory, Tim Anderson, former All-Star with the White Sox, batting titles and all that. Played with the Marlins last year in 65 games, had a terrible season, 214, 237 on base, 226 slugging, 463 OPS. Lots of leg issues. Mike lost his power and his bat over the last couple of years. All the injuries that I've seen in his history are like groin, knee, hip, that kind of stuff. So it really kind of makes you go, well, there's the fall off. Like, he doesn't have his legs under him.
Right.
The last quality year that he had was 2022. He slashed a 301 batting average, 339 on base, 395 slugging, and a 734 OPS, but he did only get into 79 games that season.
Yeah. Now the narrative is always like, oh, Angels are dumpster diving or they're bargain shopping. And honestly, like, come up with something new. Those are tired narratives. Here's why they come up though, Johnny, is because those are the types of moves that that need to be made at this time. And I think Angel fans would like the Angels to make bigger moves. We'll talk about that in just a second. But just as a reminder, these are the types of moves that you make during this time of year. February 2021, Angels signed Phil Gosselin, Juan Lagares to minor league deals. Like
Juan Lagares, oh no.
Yeah, that happens, right? 2023 in December, they signed Alfonso Rivas. They claimed him off for waivers. In that same year, they agreed to deals with Luis Garcia and Adam Simber.
We're good.
That same year, they got Willie Calhoun on a minor league contract. And then 2024, just last year, Zach Plesac was signed at this time. Adam Kolarek,
Kolarek,
thank you. Kolarek, and guys like that. Chad Wallach was signed at this time last year. Hunter Strickland was signed a little bit later in February of last year. Aidre Andrianza was signed to a minor league contract as well. So, John, this is like what you normally do during this time. In fact, Chris Oakey was just signed by the Dodgers as a backup catcher.
The third string Angels catcher? Oh, no. Yeah. The Dodgers are dumpster diving. Oh, geez. Season's over.
I think that dumpster diving conversation really comes from the fact that fans have high expectations for what the Angels are going to do. And when the Angels don't do that and they just sign these guys, the fear is that these are going to be the guys that are going to be in the lineup. And, Johnny, quite honestly, if Tim Anderson and J.D. Davis are in the lineup this year, that means we had a really terrible year, right?
Exactly. And that's the kind of situation that, you end up with these guys because you've run through all of your depth, right? Yeah. Like you have your, let's think about it for a second. You got Zach Neto, Luis Rengifo, Kevin Newman, Scott Kingery, playing the middle infield. And if you've burned through all of those guys, and we all know Neto starting the season on the injured list, if you've burned through all of those guys and Tim Anderson is up with the club, that means you've had 4 or 5 injuries in front of him.
Yeah.
And then that is to say, these are the guys that you get in those in case of emergency, break Tim Anderson glass, right? Yep. Jose Ramirez can break that glass because that's where Tim Anderson went wrong. Anyway, yes, it is a problem if you see these guys. I think J.D. Davis less than Tim Anderson. If J.D. Davis is up with the club, I'm not going to be upset because you need that third base, first base kind of situation because we've talked about the Angels really need some infielders. And so to me, I think if you see either of these guys, it's a problem, like you said, because there has been a lot of injuries. But at the same time, I think J.D. Davis is more palatable. But again, hoping that we don't see these guys, because if you do, that means the major league club has burned through all of its capable players.
Just to recap, we know that the Angels need pitching, but Pete Alonso would be great, and Tim Anderson and J.D. Davis are minor league necessary signings. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Check out Locked On MLB for your second listen with our friend Sully. You're going to find his show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and connect with Mike and I at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to today's show on YouTube. Get in the comments section, hit that subscribe button. We want 10K by opening day. Mike, I'm really excited for Friday. What do we got going on?
Yeah, we got the boys from Talking Halos. Woo-hoo! They're going to be here with us, Jared and Nate. We're going to ask Jared about some of the minor league stuff that he works with, what prospects to pay attention to. And Nate, we're going to introduce you to Nate, and he always has this negative label connected to him, Negative Nate, and we're going to make him be Positive Nate, and we'll tell you how we're going to do that on Friday on Locked On Angels.
We're fixing it. We're going to change that around. All right, friends, thanks for being here with us. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
All right, friends, thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here on Friday.
Nate's going to have to be positive.
That's going to be fun. He's looking forward to that too.